Welcome to Blue Monday, as ever, with me, Les, Dave, and Rodger. Coming to you on the back of another defeat for the Toffees, unfortunately. This was the first time Everton have been beaten twice on the bounce since David Moyes has been back. Just before we dig into that and a few more other things, bit of housekeeping. If you're watching on YouTube, please do like, share, subscribe, and leave a comment. And if you're listening to the podcast, please do leave a rating and a comment because it all helps us. Right, Chelsea away. It's got to be our biggest bogey ground, this, hasn't it? I think it's the one certainly where we've got the longest record without a win. I think November 1994 was the last time we won. Paul Rideout scored a header from an unbelievable, I think it was an Anders Limpar cross.
Yes, I was there that day. It was freezing cold. I can confirm it was a freezing cold day and it was a magnificent victory. And that was now 31 years ago. Crikey.
Everton have won a trophy since the last time he beat Chelsea away.
Wow.
Says it all, doesn't it? Yeah. Do you know, I don't think we played that badly. We weren't great. I think Rodger will probably disagree with that. I don't think we played that badly, but it just it feels like a game I've seen so many times before over the years with Everton. And again, I think like with City last week, it just laid bare all those deficiencies in the squad. That's the 15th game this season that we've not scored in. Rog, what were your takes on the game?
Okay, let me take you and some of the listeners by surprise. Let's talk about the positives. Pickford was brilliant, apart from the ball out, because I don't think you should be shooting that ball out centrally. I think it should be going wide, because if your striker does have such a terrible first touch and loses it, then the guy's straight in on goal, as was proved. But he made some great saves as usual, and without him, goodness knows where we'd be. Thought Branthwaite was absolutely magnificent, one of the best games I've seen him have, and O'Brien more than competent next to him. The other 8 players, not sure what they were up to. Some were going through the motions, some are just not good enough. We did improve a little bit in the second half. Alcaraz carried maybe a bit of a threat, but still kind of not quite the cutting edge. Beto was a bit unlucky with his shot, maybe. And the McNeil from the cross, McNeil's effort, good save by Sanchez. But that was all. I think Matt summed it up on his kind of post-match reaction from the ground, that we were kind of expecting things to drop rather than making things happen. And I think that is the story of our attacking play, isn't it? You know, a lucky bobble here, a deflection there, a thunderbolt from Tarkowski. You know, these are the kind of goals that we're scoring, rather than nice structured passing moves where there's a real style of play and understanding movement. Yeah, we're just rubbish at the top of the pitch. Thank goodness we're okay at the back of the pitch. That Chelsea team's rubbish, by the way. I mean, them getting into Champions League. I mean, if I was a Villa fan, a Forest fan, a Newcastle fan, and Chelsea are going to maybe nick a Champions League spot off us, they're a dreadful team. You know, their confidence is low. They don't seem to have much togetherness. And, you know, 1-0, fine. We had a bit of a go in the second half, but come on, they're not a good team, that Chelsea team. And again, maybe it's the hoodoo. We said, didn't we, when we went to Forest and won, and that is Forest rather than Brentford, so I haven't made a mistake yet this week. But we went to Forest, who were third in the table, and we beat them. We didn't care that they were third because it was just Forest. I mean, I think Chelsea could be bottom and we'd still struggle, because where does this mentality come from? Who knows? Disappointing, as you say. We've seen that game so many times, and you know, are we running out of steam, or are these players just returning to type? And Moyes did brilliantly to get a little bit of a dead cat bounce out of them to get us free of any relegation peril. Although this season you're probably going to stay up with 29 points, looking at the bottom 3. Yeah, just you know, a pointless game really, and that kind of sums it up. We were pretty pointless, and we came away with nothing.
Yeah, it does feel a bit like that, Dave, doesn't it? It's not only have we sort of gone past the new manager bounce bit, which was a very good bounce, by the way, and got us out of trouble almost, well, straight away, really. And it does feel like a little bit of going through the motions now, which is possibly understandable. It's been a draining season, but like Rod said, we do wait for things to happen, don't we? And it's been a bit of a problem all season. There's no one who will grab that game and try and make things happen. I think Alcaraz was probably the closest to that when he came on. But when you look at the options he's got available up front, you know, it's difficult to see, you know, how he's going to make something happen.
I have a lot of sympathy with David Moyes when you see performances like that. I've just written down there on my little notebook that it feels like a dice hangover when you see the lack of options that we have. I'm not just talking in terms of players, but I'm talking in terms of how they actually play. A lack of options that we do to create chances. It's a massive concern, and it's something that needs to be addressed first and foremost this summer. Yeah, I mean, I think to say it's bland and we're sort of going through the motions till the end of the season, I hate that term. And normally I think it's quite a lazy viewing of things, but on this particular occasion, it's not. These look like lads that, like us as fans, are. Do you know what? I just can't wait to say goodbye to this one. And again, aside from Goodison, what we've seen on the football pitch itself, it's credit to us all for still going and keeping up with all of this stuff. And that's where I do have a little bit of an asterisk around Moyes losing 2 games on the spin and the lack of victories, because I know we've drawn a lot of games as well. Which the indication is there, isn't it? It's sticking up right in the middle of everything we're talking about, the elephant in the room, that we can't score enough goals, and that's why we're drawing games. The points that Rodger made there was spot on. The only thing I'd say about Branthwaite, and this might well be overly critical, is when they score, I thought he could have probably closed down a little bit better than he did.
I think there were a lot of players at fault there.
Yeah, other way, yeah, because nobody emerged when he won the ball, obviously, from Beto, when it come off one of his shins or whatever it is that he's got. When they were able to sort of counter attack and get that shot away, I guess everybody's under surprise that it's happened, really, because it shouldn't have been going anywhere near the direction of our own goal. And then they scored a half decent finish, isn't it? And yeah, I mean, I'm probably being overly critical that there should be a few of our lads diving towards it, but nonetheless, he might have scored anyway. The chances we had there, I mean, his shot's actually half decent that they save. It's probably one of the clear strikes of a football that I've seen him do since he's been an Everton player. And I know we can credit that the same goal he scored about 3 or 4 times this season, where he just opens his body and just slots it in the bottom corner. Look, not criticising them, because they've been goals that have been big for us this season and getting us to relatively easy survival towards the end of the season. And then McNeil as well. It's a good save, doesn't it? Clean. And yeah, I mean, a performance like that, it's the kind of thing you don't come away from a match ashamed of. You don't come away from a match being overly critical, because a draw probably would have been a fair result. I think Alcaraz is the most interesting point to come away from here, and I mentioned it in our post match with Warden and Pete. I still don't think Moyes is for him. I don't think Moyes is going to be saying, "Listen, let's go and get this lad." I think at the very least he'll be looking at other options before he says, "Let's trigger that clause and get him signed in." I mean,
he doesn't want to be forced into it, which is why he's not starting him.
Yeah,
I think that's spot on. I think that's right. And I appreciate that. I think it's clever to do it that way, isn't it? Really, to sort of keep your options open, as opposed to thinking, you know what, I'm settled on this lad. I completely 100% want him in there. I think, like most players, when you've been in the Donjums like we have for such a long time, and you see a player come along there that is exciting when he gets on the ball, we all overhype him, and I think that's only natural when you're looking at a player that sticks out like a sore thumb compared to the rest that we've had that has been so, well, poor in general, to be quite frank about it. You get him on and you're looking at him thinking change the game. And Dye's the same, but and Dye's different because he does have top quality, as we've seen. He's done so many positive things for the club. Whereas Alcaraz, I think it's a little bit easier to be comfortable on the eye for all of us to watch, as opposed to everybody else who's, scrapping for things and whatnot. So that's interesting that he hasn't started. I mean, might well. How many more games does he need to play before he's triggered the?
I don't know. I'll look that up. Yeah, no one seems to have a number for that, do they?
But I think that, Les, that's the actual. That'll be the indication as to whether he's fancied or not, really, because if he is still not getting a game, and yet we are still allowed to play him, and we still doesn't, then I think that's, there's the exit door. Thanks very much for coming down for a dozen games, but you're not for us, and we're not paying this, and be on your way, and we'll look elsewhere. And I'd like to think as well, Rodger, just referring back to the recruitment side of the thing that we've spoken about quite often, I'd like to think then that there's other players in mind. I'd like to think that they've done the due diligence in terms of getting a new recruitment team in, and that Moyes is doing his homework right now. Ever since the final whistle went, and we're going to be a Premier League side next season, I'd like to think that we've gone and done that. And then as soon as the window opened, I'd like to think that we're going straight in and getting a couple of players in quite quickly before anybody else does, because you've got every option to do that. I think that's the beauty, in inverted commas, of still being a Premier League side when you've still got 6 or 7 games left to go. You've got about 6 weeks to look into who you're looking to get, what budget you've got. Everton should be starting this process right now if they haven't started it already. I think it's criminal if they haven't. And I hope the indication that I feel we're getting from the lack of faith in Alcaraz and others, is a positive one, that we're looking elsewhere and he's keeping his cards close to his chest. You're on mute, Wes.
What do we make of this Nick Hammond chap coming in? Do we know anything about that?
Who's he?
Well, he's apparently a consultant who's worked with Kinnear at Leeds, but he's a consultant, not director of football or anything. But apparently he's coming in.
I don't know. I'm quite. I don't know. I'm quite skeptical over stuff like this. These sort of moves, these sort of people getting attached to attachments, and getting these lads are coming in who are mates of mates and stuff like that.
Well, that's it, isn't it?
Yeah.
I've been critical, and you guys have been too, about jobs for the boys at Everton, and talk to Gavin Butland about it, and that goes right back to the days of appointing Harvey after Kendall rather than finding the best one who's available because he happened to be a good blue. Clearly Hammond isn't a good blue, but we should be trying to find best of breed in all roles, and maybe this guy's just coming in temporarily to oversee and put in a structure. I don't quite know, but he's a mate and he's a consultant and he's worked with him before, rather than us going out and trying to find best of breed. I don't know. It's just an aside, but it was a surprising story that broke last week.
Well, haven't we also got Michael Jordan on board as well now, or something like that?
Yeah, Michael Jordan's going to play. Well, better than Beto, I'm sure. That's, maybe. I don't know.
No, but this has happened, hasn't it? This is an NBA star. I've not read his name. Do forgive me to our listeners there. I haven't paid too much attention to it, but they don't exactly have fewer money in the pocket than everybody else, do they? They've got a few.
Yeah, he's a coach, isn't he? He's a coach. The guy that's come in, joined the ownership group, whatever that even means. But he's wealthy and he knows about sports, and clearly we want to target the US market and all of those attractions that we can play to. So I'm not sure that he comes with a wealth of knowledge about footballers, though.
Well, as someone who's known you so long and we've done so many podcasts in the past, are you skeptical? That word's again, skeptical of that sort of thing happening? Somebody coming in from another sport, somebody who's obviously heavily associated with the owners. You mentioned that term, jobs for the boys. Does that concern you in any way when you see something like this come about?
Well, I'm skeptical about things until they actually deliver. I think it's a positive to get a name in and to get someone with some global sports experience that might understand about psychology and developing a winning mentality, because that's one thing this club hasn't had for so bloody long.
Yeah.
This going out with a whimper at Chelsea, not winning at Chelsea for 30 years, and just being so lacking in belief to get games over the line, so maybe that can add to something to the overall. Jason Kidd, he's the coach of the Dallas Mavericks, is the guy's name that I was just searching for there. Yeah, maybe you can add something to it. I mean, your man Tom Brady's coming at Birmingham City, hasn't he? So yeah, he's coming on the ownership side of things. Freshening things up has got to be new. Is new and has got to be seen as a positive. But fundamentally, we need a better squad of footballers. That's our top priority. And of course, we need to make more out of the commercial partnerships that we have, and make more at the stadium, and develop the land around it, and all of those good things rather. But if the football continues to be shit, and we're not competitive, and we're carrying 14th, 15th, 16th, then no business can produce loads and loads of revenue and grow a global fan base when you're just crap.
I think the thing with these new appointments, we're going to have to sort of get used to a lot of things changing, aren't we? Because we're not used to that at our club. So we are going to have a lot of people we've never heard of coming over, probably from the States, filling roles that we didn't know existed. So I think that is something we will have to get used to. It's going to be a bit of a strange culture shock. And we've mentioned it before, that the club is on the precipice of a massive change here. Not just the fact that we're moving to a new ground, the whole setup is going to change. So where we are at the minute, it's sort of like we've still got our old Everton, like we've talked about, Rog. We've still got
that
our
one,
old
Everton. The one that's so good.
It's like we're trying to hold on to it while someone's trying to drag it away from us.
But this is the thing, isn't it? It's going to be a huge change. I mean, hopefully for the better, like you say, on the pitch, because that's the most important thing. You get nowhere, like you said. If your football team's crap, you get nowhere. You look at Man United, that ground seems to be falling apart over the last 18 months since they've been rubbish, and it just the aura around United has evaporated really, really quickly. Same way it kind of happened to Everton, sort of as we entered the 90s.
Interesting, just before you carry on that, I don't know if you heard, I was editing it yesterday, Amarim's interview after the game, after that last-minute draw they got at Bournemouth, and he was asked about, did you ever consider, like, leaving your job or not joining? And he basically openly says, at the start, I thought about it. He's basically really open about it and says that I thought about not having the job, given the situation the club were in. And perhaps now things might be changing. I thought, fair enough for being so honest with it, but can you imagine you're the size of a club like Man United and you've got some fella thinking, I'm not too sure I wanted this job.
Well, do you know what? Just going into the summer, I'm hoping that's what Jared Branthwaite thinks. If they come round. And to your point last week, Rog, Jordan Pickford as well, maybe. I just hope anyone looking at United are like, nah, don't want any of that.
No, they'll come in. They'll come in big bucks for them. I'd put my couple of quid that I have in my wallet that Man United will come in for at least Branthwaite.
One player people probably won't be coming in for is Nathan Patterson. Don't want to do him a disservice. He did okay at right back. He didn't have a great game. He looked very, very rusty. I think he needs to run in the team, doesn't he? If he's going to be we want as few positions to worry about as possible, for me. So if a player isn't out of contract, we probably want to try and use them, I think. And I think Nathan Patterson falls into that category. I think give him a run of games, see how he gets on, and maybe not worry so much about the right back position. What do you think, Rog?
I think Kevin Thirlwell could prove to be our saviour here for once and take him with him to Rangers and give us about 15 million.
Oh, there is that, yeah.
Well, they'd adore to have him back, wouldn't they? I mean, he
fit right in there. Yeah,
very reluctantly let him go.
To do. Be great.
Yeah, I mean, he was the right back darling ahead of the clown that plays left back across the park, wasn't he? He was. They were meant to be like Cafu and Maldini, weren't they, of Scotland? And less said the better. But one of them turned out winning trophies, and the other one's been absolutely shit for us.
He's been like plagued, because that's the word you use, plagued by injuries, hasn't he? I think as big a part in his development is the fact that he's not been able to stay fit. We don't. That's the thing, isn't it? Like I think we said before, he's 3 years in, and we still don't know what he's like, if he's any good. Which is
he's
mad.
The kind of player that you look at, and stick with me here for a second. He's the kind of player that you look at and think he should be good because he looks like he's somebody who runs himself into the ground. He looks like the kind of fullback, similar in a way to what we first got emerging from Coleman, who didn't necessarily have Premier League quality, but he almost fought his way to have that. And Patterson, I've looked at from when I've seen him on various occasions where I thought this lad's going to do something similar to that in regards to the way in which he's approaching being a Premier League footballer. Then he's had a scrap with Dice. Things haven't fallen his way. Shall we say that at least?
No.
Important not to, say this lad like I've done wrongly in saying he's completely shit, but he hasn't had the rub of the green whilst he's been here. So and we've been in a position where we've not been able to try him out. Firstly, because we had the most stubborn manager in the world, and second, when we have seen him, you're still opting to have Ashley Young or Seamus ahead of him, and I think that would indicate that Everton would take Sale from him in the summer, which would be a shame because like they were basically crying when they let go of him, and I know all of the things that come with the SPL and whatnot, and how much lesser it is than the Premier League, but that doesn't mean there aren't top class players there. And he came down here and still never got that run of games, injuries, whatnot. It's some things just don't work out when you go to a particular club. And in the typical Everton style, if he goes back to Rangers, he'll end up as a top class right back and end up coming back into the Premier League with a side that are challenging for the title.
Well, the thing, it wouldn't be unprecedented with Everton, would it? We seem to, over the last 5 years in particular, have bought decent players at the wrong time. And so that's not a new story.
Patterson's also not been well coached. Patterson's been very unlucky. The managers he's had have been pretty clueless. Lampard and Dyche. He was tail end of Benitez as well, was he not? Because we used the Digne money to buy Mikalenko and him. I think that was the same time. But he's had no coaching. He's been unlucky with injuries, and maybe there's a player there, maybe there isn't.
I can never let that pass without reminding everyone that the club had Livramento lined up, and Benitez said no. So there we go. On the other side, Mikalenko, I think he's done well again. I think he's looking like a solid left back, and he's getting forward a bit more now as well. So that could be a position where we don't really have to worry about. Should definitely have had a penalty for me. What do you reckon?
Yeah, no, that's spot on. He should have, and I was sick. I was sick of it that you see so much protection around referees. There's enough protection around referees, isn't there, with VAR? So much protection around goalkeepers. I mean, he comes out, he clears him, doesn't he? It's a potentially serious injury as well.
He hasn't got to control the ball at all.
Yeah, and he gave a free kick to Chelsea, for God's sake.
Yeah,
exactly. I mean, what are you supposed to do? I feel like I'm going back to that lad who's funny when you'll have seen it, the meme video when there's a foul given against Leighton Baines and he goes, "What are you supposed to do? Fucking disappear?"
Yeah, it was that, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It's like that. And he's just standing there and he just gets run into with the ball not in any sort of control until the keeper gets it in his hands. And I'd like to think I'd throw that one under the category of if that was the home team at the other end, then they probably get given a penalty. The fact that it wasn't even looked at, the fact that it's Mikalenko, the fact that it's Everton, and I hate going to that sort of age-old cliche, but it does sort of feel that way, that a goalkeeper can come and do that and just basically barge into somebody and he can do what he likes basically and not get given anything against them.
It's just reminded me of one that Spurs got a few years ago against us when Harry Kane ran into Pickford's head. Do you remember? Pickford went down for the ball and Harry Kane ran into him and got the penalty. It's like there's zero consistency, and when a player gets cleaned out like that and you don't get the pen, I don't know what's going on.
I think it's the personality of the player. That's the point. It's little old Mikalenko, stature-wise. But had it been Kane, had it been Salah, had it been Haaland, or had it been, I don't know, Saka, then there'd have been uproar. And clearly it must be a foul because they're good attacking people who don't commit fouls.
Yeah, and then that's top of the pages the next day, isn't it? On the back pages, if Pep Guardiola comes out kicking off the star striker who cost 100 million quid wasn't given a penalty and it's a massive injustice, and then you'll have Howard Webb and Michael Owen talking about it all week. That doesn't happen with Mikalenko, does it? That's not a narrative that's going to be developed by anybody, and that again is something else that I think you'll have referees probably leaning towards those sorts of decisions, isn't it? It's like, I can't be doing with the grief that I'm going to get if I don't give this decision.
Howard Webb was still talking about Tarkowski last week. It's been like 3 weeks since it happened. So
I love the way he feels. He feels like he's like a top. He feels like he's what's his bloody name, Stephen Mulhern. He seems to think he's him, and he's standing there next to Michael Owen and turns to look directly into the camera, and you're like, do you think you're an American? That's something I was going to say, by the way, we'll have to start getting used to, is Americans. And again, I'm putting nothing against the Rob Vieira, but we will have to get used with the Americans coming in, doing 2-hour interviews and saying about one thing.
Yeah, I think so. We'll finish off on this game on the plus points that Rodger mentioned before. O'Brien and Branthwaite looked a good pair, and O'Brien slotted into centre back as we all thought he would if we'd have done it last week. But they did look very good together, didn't they? If it's a massive if we can keep them together and have that sort of fulcrum at the back with Pickford as well, that is a good solid base to build on, isn't it?
It is. I mean, I forgot to mention earlier, I liked the Branthwaite trying to whack Nicholas Jackson, when he was holding onto his shirt. I was convinced then Branthwaite was going to get sent off for being impolite or something, when they're having that tussle. But no, they both got something about them. I mean, they should be big lads. They're playing centre-back, to physical game. But they're both, I really like that partnership. They didn't have that much to do because Chelsea's threat through, I know Jackson scored, but, it would be good to see them against, who would you say? Somebody like Mateta, which might be a link to later on in the podcast, or somebody like Watkins who's going to run in behind. But they look really good. They were definitely positives to take out of the game.
This is the kind of thing that you look at where you think, something that you wanted to see, but it's never really going to happen. With the thought that Branthwaite's going to go in the summer. I think we mentioned this quite some time there, that it's, and I've mentioned it about 100 times, so do forgive me for this little bit of association I've always had towards him with Lescott, who was really good at a fullback, came in at centre-back and was even better. Either along this time, Jagielka, the way in which he came in, I thought Lescott was brilliant for us until what happened in that infamous day on the opening day at Goodison against Arsenal before he left off to go to Man City. He was basically wearing their shirts when he played for us that day. But I'd love to see those two together. It's interesting the way things work out, isn't it? When it's probably come a little bit too late for us to properly get our teeth into as a defensive partnership that could even do a better job than Everton being successful defensively like we have been all season. I mean, I get criticised a lot for my thoughts on Tarkowski, but I'd rather have Tarkowski as the lesser of that three, or the least of those three who gets to start games at the two centre-back positions. And you've got, like you say, big lads. You've got big lads who are quick. That's not common. So I'd expect them to be a fantastic duo. It just feels to me like it's a little bit after the Lord Mayor's parade.
Just on that then, it does feel like Moyes could have a bit of a headache here. Like we said, it's probably worth Patterson getting a run of games now till the end of the season just to see what he's got and see if that's a position we need to look at in the summer. But if he does give Patterson that run of games, then who is the casualty of the centre-backs? For me, it does really have to be Tarkowski and play those two together and see how that goes. Obviously, with a view to moving O'Brien into centre-back next season, whatever happens, whether Tarkowski's still there and Branthwaite's still there, or if Branthwaite gets off. Interesting headache that, though, for Moyes, isn't it? I think he'd drop Patterson in a heartbeat, to be honest.
Yeah, but Tarkowski's out for the season, isn't he?
Oh, is that it now? Is he done?
Oh, yeah. He's having surgery on his hamstring, I read, I'm sure.
There you
so
go.
It's all done. Yeah. I think he's out for the season.
See, look,
and he might not be back.
I mean, that
opens for the whole of pre-season either. I'm sure Moyes said that in his press conference this week.
I think that's going to open the pathway for us all to be crying when we don't see that fantastic duo we've just mentioned there, and Branthwaite gets off in the 1st of June or whenever it is when the window opens. Like I say, it's one of them things that feels like it's come a little bit too late for us to properly to drool over whenever we've got a duo at the back there who are going to be. I would predict Branthwaite's going to be the England centre back for a long, long time going forward, and O'Brien similarly for this country as well. They just look like we've actually got with those two lads. It's the only credit you could possibly give any sort of Everton recruitment in the last how many years? 10 nearly.
They've been massive, haven't they? Branthwaite in particular was just a stunning find, and just a really an absolute bargain. No matter how much we make on him, it's been a hell of a signing. Right, before we move on to the final part of the show, just got to give a little word to our sponsors, NordVPN. NordVPN is a virtual private network that helps you stay safe and secure while accessing streaming services and content, no matter where in the world you are, which is sound if anyone's going off on the summer holidays soon. So if you're traveling and you need to catch a match you can't miss, NordVPN has got you covered. NordVPN lets you switch virtual location to access sports and TV shows from other countries, so you can keep up with the Toffees from anywhere in the world. It's great for staying protected online as well. I use it when I'm working away, and it's dead handy if you're off on your summer holidays soon as well. And maybe you want to watch the Toffees in that summer tournament in the States from anywhere in the world. Also means you're safeguarding yourself from cyber threats and dodgy public Wi-Fi networks. So I don't know if you know this, but if you do use a public network, say, you're out in a coffee shop or something, there are people who can hack into them. So if you use NordVPN, you can do that and you can stream and browse with total peace of mind. It's simple to use, simpler than me reading this out, obviously. Just switch your virtual location to access apps and websites from different countries. Plus, one NordVPN account covers up to 10 devices, so you can protect the whole family with just one plan. All this for the cost of a cup of coffee each month. So make sure you don't miss out on our exclusive Blue Room deal too. Head to nordvpn.com/blueroom and you get an extra 4 months free when you sign up for the 2-year plan. And don't worry, there's no risk with NordVPN's 30-day money-back guarantee. Head over to nordvpn.com/blueroom. That's NORDVPN.com/blueroom to find out more. And the link is in the episode description box. So make sure you check that out too. Right, let's finish on prospects for next season. In comparison to a side who's having a good season, it would appear this season. Crystal Palace beat Aston Villa 3-0. Bit of a shock result, really, I think. Villa has sort of fallen off towards the end of the season, it seems. They've just gone out the Champions League, just out the FA Cup. But still, nonetheless, a very, very good side. So to get walloped by Palace, that's a hell of a result for the Eagles. Rodger, you sent us a message saying, you look at their team and how many of our team gets into the Palace side. I think we'll move on to that, but I think what that does show is Palace seem to have infinitely better side than us, but they're still stuck at 12th. So it shows how big a job Everton have got on their hands. It's easy to say, we're safe with however many games left. We can build on this for next season. But when you look at the strength in that Palace side, they've got some very, very good players, and they still can't break that top 10. It's yes. I'm not saying it's the most competitive league ever, but that middle bit it's tough to move up those places, isn't it?
It is, and Palace are a funny one. I think they're a particularly well-run club these days. Glasner was a good appointment. They stuck by him. They probably stuck by Roy a bit too long. And Glasner didn't have the greatest start to the season. They were a bit iffy, and they've been up and down. They were on a good run. Then they conceded like 10 in 2 games against Man City and Newcastle, didn't they? So I thought, their bubbles burst, and here come Villa to get through to an FA Cup final. They absolutely destroyed Villa. They were magnificent. And of course, how ridiculous is it to say, well, what Everton players would get in a Palace team? I can just hear people screaming as they listen to this. But Pickford clearly does. But Henderson's a very good goalkeeper. He's had a fantastic season. And those who follow fantasy football, he's the best value keeper, kept clean sheets, makes a lot of saves, looks really competent. I think our 2 centre-backs would get into their team. But Gay is a good player, and that Lacroix is a very, very good player. But you look elsewhere and you look at their attacking threat. I mean, Mateta, I thought, was a bit of a donkey when they bought him. They took him on loan from Mainz, and then they signed him for less than 10 million, I think. I mean, it wasn't big bucks. It's certainly less than we're going to end up paying for Beto. And what a player he's become. He's been well coached. They took Eze, who was a star at QPR, and they took him and integrated him. They're going to sell him for a big profit. Don't forget they sold Elise to Bayern Munich in the close season, for big bucks. And did they sell Anderson, the centre-back, to Fulham, I think, as well?
Fulham, that's right. He was fantastic as well, Rodger. He was one of my stars of last season, that lad.
Yeah, he was. He went to Fulham and they got Lacroix in to replace him. Tyrick Mitchell plays on one side. I think is he the left back? Is he the right back or the left back? And he's homegrown, 25 years old. He's played, 30-odd games a season for the last 3 years. Munoz, they got in for not much dough. I think from Belgium, a fullback. And the whole style of play, Sarr they took. Sarr was a star at Watford, wasn't he? And then he went to Marseille, I think. And then they've bought him from Marseille. He's had a great season. And Eze. So there's a style of play there. And of course, Adam Wharton, who when he left Blackburn, I mean, he's still only 21, England international, centre midfield. Jefferson Lerma does you a job in midfield. He's kind of their version of our Idrissa Gueye, perhaps, that break up the play, ball winner kind of role. What a good team, well coached and a discernible style of play. And that's where the bar is. So forget top 6. Where are we against Fulham? Where are we against Palace? Where are we against Brentford and Brighton? Okay, we may be better than West Ham, and that is quite funny. And I was one of the highlights of the weekend, if there was a highlight of the weekend, with that shower winning the league and us getting beaten at Chelsea, was Harry Potter getting beat at Brighton. I thought that was hilarious. Just fantastic.
I think he could see him spontaneously combust in one of these press conferences. He's a man on the edge, isn't he?
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, I mean, he just had a bit of he was a bit lucky at Brighton, wasn't he? Brighton did better without him. Chelsea, complete failure. And West Ham, he's taking them convincingly to fourth bottom, unless Man U will probably give them a run for the money to get fourth bottom.
I think Spurs are looking good for that now.
Spurs,
yeah. It's the battle for 17th next week, isn't it?
Spurs, League Spurs, though, when they go Bodo Glint, what on earth's happening there? Anyway, sorry, back to the point. Crystal Palace, good team, good manager, well-run club, loads of good players, loads of attacking threat, so much more than we have at the top end of the pitch, with players that didn't cost a fortune and well coached. That's the way.
Yeah, I think for me, Dave, that's got to be the template, hasn't it, for Everton? It's like, I've thought this for years about Palace. Like when they picked up Eze, when they picked up Elise, they are players that should have been on Everton's radar. Now, I know they're sort of on Palace's doorstep because we were both from southern clubs. But then you look at Adam Moore, and he went for relatively big money. I mean, not a massive amount, but in terms of what Everton can spend. But, you know, a promising midfielder at Blackburn, that should be bread and butter for a Northwest club like Everton, shouldn't it? It's very unusual for a player to make that kind of move down to London at that age. And I just think you look at the players they've bought, they are the profile of player we should be going for. That is the
apart from Eddie Nketiah, just to say, from Eddie Nketiah, who is Crystal Palace's number 9, and they did have their pants pulled down on that one, I suspect. But everything else they've done pretty faultless in the recruitment, and their manager's a good manager. I mean, he's proven it. You know, an Austrian manager. He's going to be the first Austrian manager in an FA Cup final, and I'll certainly be cheering on the Eagles against City with their can't even afford to buy tickets. And what is that all about, honestly? They can't even go to a semi-final because, it's a bit too much for us because we've been there 27 years in a row. Dear.
Yeah, I mean, I was a big fan watching Palace there. I think Villa, it's actually, I pretty much like Aston Villa, but I think it's been a bit of a homecoming for it, hasn't it? Been a bit of a slap in the face. The fact that their season just fell apart inside the week. Yeah. What happened to them? I mean, they were. I mean, it was a great watch, wasn't it? Them against PSG. That could have gone if they'd won that. You start thinking, do you know what? Are they going to be like Greece when they went and won the Euros in 2004? I mean, go on Palace though. I mean, just to mention that even Will Hughes as well, who I've never been a fan of, even he stood up here. And they've got a squad as well of players to come in. I was thinking there at left back, we didn't mention Chilwell's there, that he's fit again. He's been playing. And I was just on a wider sort of look at those mid-table sides there that we're talking about. I mean, I'm looking here, Fulham, our old mate Silva has got them well drilled. That they're the only other side other than Forest who beat the champions this season. They've got Anderson, who they brought in. He's done a great job with Iwobi as well.
Yes, he has.
They've got Jimenez is back there scoring goals as well. Is it Muniz they've got up front, or Muniz?
Yeah, Muniz. Yeah,
he's handy. So they've got players in there. Brighton, who are overly spoken about a million times. I think even that sort of the love towards them is sort of slowly edging away because everybody's been that way. It's the way in which they're run, and we've spoken about it in the past, how they're structured as a club, and they've done a fantastic job. It's almost a cliche now that they do that sort of thing, but nonetheless, they're doing fine. You've got Brentford, who we haven't even mentioned there. They're up in and amongst it. You think about that level of teams. That four I've written down there: Fulham, Palace, Brighton, and Brentford.
Bournemouth.
For us, Bournemouth. I mean, Bournemouth have been my favourite team this season. And again, it looks like that they're sort of running out of gas towards the end of it. Because I'd loved it if they got in the Champions League. Absolutely loved it, but it looked like they might not even get into Europe now. You look at them.
Match fixing at its finest yesterday, by the way. The Evan Nielsen red card, and then the slightly dodgy offside equaliser in the 480th added minute of 6. You know, God
That's right,
almighty. Fergie time is alive and well.
They nearly went and won it as well, didn't they? After that, I thought that's definitely going to be that's definitely going to be in favour of the bookies there. Bet 365 will be all over the place. So you add those 5 there, so a quarter of the league. How far we've got to go to get to stick our heads above the parapet against those 5? That's a big ask. That's a big summer of recruitment. I hate to say it, but I mean, if we finish in the top half next season, I think you've done something really well there. If we make the top half of the new season coming up, David Moyes has done an equally really good job. If Everton are able to do that, based on what I've just said there in those teams,
absolutely, no doubt, absolutely agree with you, because 2 or 3 of those teams you've mentioned aren't going to finish top half this season.
Exactly, and add to that the fact that you would imagine Spurs, Bin, Ange, and United will keep who they've got, but when you've got the spending prowess they have, might well take Branthwaite as well, as we've sort of joked whilst we're crying. If they go and do that too, you've got 2 sides that are probably going to be above Everton, certainly in regards to what they're able to go and do recruitment wise and change everything that they've got. I don't mean to sound like quite depressed here, which is what I'm renowned for on our podcast for many, many years, but
that's why it's
Everton,
Blue Monday.
Well, there you go. Everton, well, it was Monday Blues, I wanted to call it in the first instance. But I feel as if you've got to, Everton have got to step up big time here this summer. If we're going to think we're going to be in and amongst those sides. And look, we need to know the 8th probably gets to Europe. So, if you're looking at a step, taking a big step up the table rather than looking down it, that's going to be a massive task. I think it's very easy, since we've comfortably stayed in the Premier League, it's very easy to say, do you know what, that's it now. Everton are going to be absolutely fine. Everton are going to progress really comfortably, really easily. You're having a structure. You've got Bramley Moore. I'm trying to stay a little bit tempered with all of that sort of thing, particularly given the recruitment, particularly given who might go. I've mentioned Branthwaite a million times, haven't we? But if that happens, there's a lot of things to replace as well as go and get to make it better.
Yeah, the league generally splits into 3, doesn't it? You sort of have your top sort of hovering around the Champions League European spots. Then you have that middle section. Then you have the people scrapping out. This season's no different, other than it's kind of split into 4 because the relegation teams are so far adrift. The bottom's being sorted. Then you've got that sort of 4 or 5 teams up to 13th, of which Wolves are leading.
Well, we didn't mention, I was about to say Wolves, with that dreadful coach Victor Pereira that we didn't want at all. He was going to be a disaster. Remember, we wanted Super Frank, and he's gone there, and they've won 6 on the bounce.
Yeah, crazy.
Well, Cunha as well. They've got. I think he's on his way.
He's on his way to Man United. The poor thing.
Yeah. So I mean, he's a great player to watch. He reminds me a little bit. He reminds me of Joe Linton at Newcastle, big, powerful lad who you brought in as a striker and thought this lad's crap, and then all of a sudden he found a niche in the team and he's actually a really good player.
I tell you what, it's a good job United sacked all those catering staff, isn't it? Because now they can go out and afford a place like Cunha.
There you go.
Crazy.
There you go.
It's amazing. The savings you can make. Every penny counts.
Yeah, everyone who got sacked there, I'll be delighted that United are basically going to go and sign a player for them. It might well be shit.
Outrageous. Rodger, final thoughts to you on that then for next season?
We just got to sign some players, haven't we? We've got to improve the squad an awful lot. And I think there's nothing coming through the academy, is there? There is nothing. There's nothing coming through. There's not a hint of players getting game time or getting on the bench, let alone getting game time. So we will have to trade Branthwaite. We're going to need the money. Hopefully we can hold on to Pickford and build a team around O'Brien and centre back, and Mikalenko's all right at left back, and maybe Patterson will be a player. But top end of the pitch, we have next to nothing. And if anything, Alcaraz and Ndai, are kind of mavericky type players. Where do they play? Are they 10? Are they wide? And we need a number 9. We need a Mateta. That's what we need. We need to go and find a Mateta. Even a Danny Welbeck of 5 years ago. Just imagine if we'd have brought somebody like that in, that sort of model pro to lead the line and score goals and set the standards in training and all of that good stuff. So we need pace, we need creativity. We've got the best manager that we could have got in terms of Moyes, given the circumstances. But what a roller coaster it's been in these last 10 years to go from 2 semi-finals under Roberto in 2016 to where we are now. Delighted that we're staying up. I mean, that's just the standards have never been lower, but we have a bright future on the banks of the Royal Blue Mersey. We need some bloody players.
In 4 months' time, we'll be sat here on the first Blue Monday of the season saying we'll go with what we've got.
Yeah, and we'll have been beaten at home by who's going to come up in the playoffs?
Leeds.
Millwall. Yeah. No, they'll need to go up automatically. Millwall.
No, Coventry with Frank. Coventry with Frank.
No, they're going to drop out because they've bottled it. I think Millwall and Blackburn are going to pip them for the last spot. One of those two will pip them.
Millwall.
And we'll have lost at home to Millwall in the first game at Bramley
Friday night, Millwall.
Yeah. What could possibly go wrong?
We will be Friday night. I'm pretty sure we'd be Friday night, wouldn't we?
See, my big fear was we'd be Friday night at home to Millwall and our first game in the new ground in the Championship. But that's not going to happen. But weirdly,
Premier League now.
Weirdly, it could well be in the Premier League. Right, we'll leave it on that slightly depressing note. Not like us at all. Cheers, Dave. Cheers, Rod. Thanks to everyone who's listening. We've got all the usual stuff coming up this week, leading up to that penultimate final game of Goodison against Ipswich Town. So keep it tuned into the Blue Room for all that coming up this week. We'll catch you soon.